My father leaned across the polished mahogany of the restaurant table, gesturing to my brother's new fiancée with a wineglass. "Don't mind Rebecca," he said, his voice slick with fake charm. "She's our little project. Still trying to figure out what to do with her life." The woman, Amelia, just stared at me, her brow furrowed in a way that told me she wasn't buying it. "My name is Rebecca Hayes, and I'm 28 years old. For as long as I can remember, I've been the quiet one in a very loud family. My parents built a successful local real estate empire from the ground up. And my older brother Mark was the perfect son following right in their footsteps. Their world was loud, shiny, and expensive. They measured success in square footage and commission checks. They loved big, flashy displays of wealth, gleaming German cars, charity galas where they smiled for the local paper, and stories about closing million-dollar deals. Their laughter was always just a little too loud, their handshakes a little too firm, and then there was me. I didn't want to sell houses. I wanted to build worlds. I started my own tech company from the corner of my tiny one-bedroom apartment. My life was a quiet hum of a laptop fan, fueled by cheap coffee and instant noodles. To my family, this wasn't ambition. It was a complete and total failure to launch. They saw my simple, comfortable clothes and my rented apartment not as temporary sacrifices for a bigger dream, but as hard proof that I just couldn't make it in their world. I think they loved me in their own way, but they were deeply, profoundly embarrassed by me. What they didn't know was that my quiet little life was about to make a very, very loud noise. Has your family ever treated you like this? Like you were a problem to be solved instead of a person to be loved? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every single one. The whole reason we were there was for my brother Mark's engagement dinner. He was marrying Amelia, a woman my family was practically drooling over. She was a partner at a big venture capital firm in San Francisco. The kind of success story my parents could brag about at the country club for years. To impress her, they'd booked the most expensive private room at a steakhouse downtown. The kind of place with dark wood walls, heavy white tablecloths, and waiters who moved like ghosts. The air smelled of money and seared meat. The entire dinner felt like a performance, and I was the unwilling stagehand. My dad launched into his greatest hits, telling exaggerated stories about Mark's big sales. My mom wouldn't stop complimenting Amelia on her investment portfolio, a topic she clearly knew nothing about. I just sat there pushing a piece of asparagus around my plate, feeling the familiar weight of being invisible. Finally, the spotlight turned to me, and the temperature in the room dropped. "Rebecca is still working on her little computer project," my mom explained to Amelia, patting my hand like I was a sick child. The condescension in her touch was worse than any insult. Mark chimed in with a smug grin. "Yeah, we keep telling her to get a real job. Maybe I can find an internship for you at our office, BK? Answering phones or something. It'd be good for you to be around a professional environment." Amelia, trying her best to be polite, turned to me. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent. "Oh, what kind of project is it?" Before I could even open my mouth, my father cut in, waving his hand dismissively. "Honey, it's complicated. She's building some kind of app. One of a million out there." He let out a heavy sigh as if my dream was a heavy burden he was forced to carry for me. For the next 10 minutes, they talked about me like I wasn't even there. They painted a picture of a lost, confused girl who refused to accept the real world. I felt my cheeks grow hot, but I said nothing. I just focused on the clinking sound of silverware against plates, letting their words wash over me. The final twist of the knife came when the bill arrived in its leather folder. My dad made a grand show of pulling out his platinum credit card. He looked directly at me, a pitying smile on his face. "Don't worry, Rebecca. I've got this. You just focus on whatever it is you do." The message was crystal clear. "You are the family charity case. You are not one of us. You can't even afford to eat here." I just nodded, the silence in my throat feeling like stone. But this wasn't the first time. This was just the latest chapter in a long, sad book. About a month before that dinner, my parents had hosted a huge networking event at their house. It was a big deal. They'd invited local investors, business partners, even distant cousins who worked in finance. The goal was to raise capital for a new development project. I only found out about it because I saw pictures on my aunt's social media feed. My whole family smiling, raising glasses of champagne. Everyone was there but me. When I called my mom the next day, her voice was breezy, casual. "Oh, sweetie, we didn't want to bother you." It was a very high-level business conversation. All numbers and projections. We didn't want you to feel bored or out of place. Out of place, that was the phrase she used. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message. You do not belong in the world of success. You are not one of us. The hurt was a dull ache that settled deep in my chest. I knew then that they didn't just misunderstand my dream. They actively looked down on it. They saw my path as so worthless that my presence at their event would be an embarrassment. They were protecting their image, not my feelings. And I had to wonder, if they kept pushing me out, would there be anything left to come back to? The public humiliations were even worse. We all went to a 4th of July barbecue at a family friend's house. It was a hot sunny day, the air thick with the smell of charcoal and freshly cut grass. I was actually having a decent time talking to a neighbor I hadn't seen in years. Then I heard my dad's booming voice from across the yard. He was standing by the grill, a beer in his hand, holding court with a group of his friends. He saw me and called out loud enough for everyone to hear. My son Mark is set to take over the family business, making real moves. And my daughter Rebecca, well, she's following her passion. He laughed, a big hearty laugh, and the group around him chuckled politely. The way he said the word passion made it sound like a disease. He used it as a punchline, a synonym for unemployment and failure. I felt a dozen pairs of eyes turn to me. My face burned with a shame so intense it felt like a physical heat. The neighbor I was talking to gave me a tight, pitying smile and quickly changed the subject. I spent the rest of the party hiding in a corner, just waiting for the moment I could leave without anyone noticing. I drove home with his laughter echoing in my ears. It was the sound of my own father telling the world I was a joke. The final straw before the dinner was the phone call from my brother Mark. He called me the week of his engagement party, his voice filled with a fake syrupy concern that set my teeth on edge. "Hey Beck," he started. "I was just thinking, you know, with the dinner coming up, I know things are probably a little tight for you right now." I stayed silent, waiting for the inevitable insult wrapped in a package of fake kindness. "I was thinking," he continued, "that maybe I could loan you a few hundred, so you can buy a nice new dress. I want you to look presentable. Amelia's family is going to be there, and first impressions really matter." A loan. He wanted to give me a loan so I wouldn't embarrass him. It wasn't an act of brotherly love. It was an act of control. It was his way of reminding me of my place in the family hierarchy. The struggling younger sister who needed his charity to even look the part. The rage that flashed through me was hot and swift. He didn't see me as a sister. He saw me as a potential liability to his image. "Thanks, Mark," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "But I already have something to wear. I'll be fine. Are you sure?" He pressed. "It's no big deal. I just want everything to be perfect." "I'm sure," I said, and hung up the phone before I could say something I'd regret. He didn't want things to be perfect. He wanted me to be perfect, to be a reflection of his own success. And that was something I could never be. What they didn't see, what they never bothered to ask about, was my reality. What my family saw as failure was actually a period of intense consuming focus. While they were playing golf at the country club, I was on 6 a.m. Zoom calls with my lead developers in Berlin. While they were bragging about closing another local real estate deal, I was quietly negotiating a 7-figure or seed funding round with a group of international investors who saw the global potential of my company, Aura Tech. They heard the word app, and their minds immediately went to kids playing games on their phones. They never asked about the specifics. They didn't know I was building a sophisticated logistics platform that was set to revolutionize the shipping industry. They never wondered why I was so secretive about my work, or why I always politely turned down their condescending offers of financial help. The truth was, I was under a strict non-disclosure agreement until the funding was finalized, and we were ready for our public launch. I couldn't tell them. I couldn't tell anyone. So, I let them think what they wanted. I remember sitting at my laptop the night Mark offered me money for address. I had just gotten off a 3-hour call with my new lead investor, confirming the final details of the wire transfer. The amount of money that was about to hit my company's bank account was more than my father's annual profit. The irony was so thick, I could barely breathe. They saw me hunched over a glowing screen in a small, cheap apartment and saw poverty. They couldn't see the digital empire I was building, one line of code at a time. They thought my silence was shame, but it wasn't. It was strategy. And I had a feeling the silence was about to break. Back at the dinner table, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a steak knife. Throughout the evening, Amelia was the only person who seemed genuinely interested in me. While my family talked over me or about me, She kept trying to steer the conversation back in my direction. Her questions were sharp, direct, and professional. "What specific market are you targeting with your platform?" she asked, her gaze piercing. "What's your user acquisition strategy for the first 2 quarters?" My parents and Mark shifted uncomfortably in their seats. These weren't questions they knew how to answer. They were used to talking about curb appeal and closing costs, not user acquisition. Her intelligence made them nervous. They completely misread her politeness as her just being nice to the less fortunate sister. It made them double down on their narrative, trying to find common ground with her in their world of high-stakes business, which only served to isolate me further. At one point, Mark puffed out his chest and said, "Amelia works with actual founders, Rebecca, real visionaries, people who are changing the world. It's a completely different league from, a little side project." He said it without a hint of malice, which somehow made it even worse. He truly genuinely believed it. He thought he was connecting with his fiancée, but I could see a flicker of annoyance in Amelia's eyes. The breaking point finally came when my mother started talking about my future as if it were a failing property she needed to unload. "We just hope one day she'll find a nice, stable young man to take care of her," she said to Amelia, squeezing my shoulder with a grip that felt more like a warning. Amelia's polite smile finally vanished. Her face became a mask of professional curiosity. She looked from my mother's anxious face to my calm one. I could see the gears turning in her mind, connecting invisible dots. A flicker of recognition crossed her features. She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a quiet, serious tone. "What did you say the name of your company was?" Again, my heart started to pound in my chest. This was it. I met her gaze, and for the first time all night, I felt a surge of power. My voice was steady and clear. "It's called Oratech." Amelia's eyes widened. She put down her fork with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the suddenly silent room. Her entire demeanor shifted. She was no longer a polite fiancée meeting the family. She was a venture capitalist who had just stumbled upon a unicorn in the wild. She looked directly at me, her focus so intense that everyone else at the table seemed to disappear. "Oratech," she repeated, the name tasting strange and powerful in this room, filled with real estate jargon. Then her voice became clear and loud, cutting through the heavy silence. "Wait, your name is Rebecca Hayes. L. Hayes, you're the founder." The world stopped. My father's charming smile froze and cracked on his face. My mother's expression was a mess of utter bewilderment. Mark just stared, his mouth slightly open. I didn't offer a big explanation. I just gave her a slow, deliberate nod. Amelia's head whipped around to face my brother. Her expression was unreadable, a cold, hard mask of professionalism. "You said you wanted to introduce me to visionaries. My firm has been trying to get a meeting with V. Hayes for the last 6 months. She's notorious for staying anonymous. We had a standing 7-figure offer on the table to lead her Series A funding round. But we couldn't even get past her legal team." She didn't wait for a response. She pulled out her phone, her thumbs moving with practice speed. She turned the screen toward my family. It was a major tech industry article from a well-respected journal. The headline was big and bold. "The invisible founder Haux VLH built a $20 million company from stealth mode." Beneath the headline was a picture not of me, but of my company's logo. The article was filled with quotes from top investors, all praising the founder's genius, vision, and her revolutionary approach to logistics. My father stared at the phone, his face drained of all its color. My mother looked like she had seen a ghost. All the condescending remarks from the past few years, little project, charity case, following her passion, figuring her life out, hung in the air between us, toxic and utterly ridiculous. Mark looked from the phone screen to me, his face a pathetic mixture of shock, jealousy, and complete staggering disbelief. For the first time in my entire life, my family had absolutely nothing to say. Their silence was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I didn't need to yell, I didn't need to gloat, I didn't need to say, "I told you so." Their stunned, horrified faces said everything for me. I calmly placed my linen napkin on the table next to my untouched plate. I stood up, the legs of my chair making a soft, scraping sound on the wooden floor. I looked at Amelia and gave her a small, genuine smile. "It was a pleasure to finally meet you," I said. Then I turned my gaze to my family. They looked like statues, frozen in their regret. "I have an early call with my European team tomorrow morning," I said, my voice even and calm. "Enjoy the rest of your dinner." I walked out of that private room. I didn't run, I didn't look back. I walked through the main dining room, past the curious glances of other patrons, and out into the cool night air. The silence that followed me wasn't the awkward, pitying silence I was so used to. It was the sound of their world being turned upside down. In that moment, I finally understood that I had never needed their approval to be successful. I just needed to believe in myself. They didn't lose a daughter that night. They had lost her years ago, piece by piece, with every dismissive comment and every pitying glance. Tonight, they just lost the privilege of being part of my journey. If you've ever had to prove your worth to those who doubted you, hit subscribe and tell me your story. Your voice matters here, and this is a community that understands. Thank you for listening.